Just sitting here by myself, just waiting. Test, test. Testity, test, test. Microphone, speaker. Test, pause. We are live.
Live at home.
We're,
in the studio.
We're live right now, but we're recording this.
Right.
Yes, you are correct.
You're quick to hit the record button.
We are alive. Let's just say we're alive.
We are alive
Yeah,
as well.
we are alive. Okay.
So I have a topic for today.
Oh no.
Do you,
I have no topic.
no topics? Okay, so
ready to take notes, but I have no topic.
this topic will be very apropos for how we just started. Okay.
How we just started this podcast.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, and this conversation.
So you're just
in a
gonna
way.
jump into something.
Exactly. So I heard the other day someone commenting about relationships and how birth order in, if you marry someone or meet someone who's just, it's unusual for a firstborn and a firstborn
Like
to
firstborn, secondborn, thirdborn.
right. Yeah. And so on.
And we're both firstborns.
And we're both firstborns, which is apparently quite unusual. Yeah.
Firstborn mentality.
Yes, and I'm not going to cry because
No, because you wanted to push me to that. Okay.
so yeah. Whereas we know the younger sibling would typically start crying, right? Or maybe fight back a bit.
They'd holler for mom or dad.
Yeah, exactly. But not
You touched me.
well, if I get that way about you, then we're in real trouble.
I know.
Mhm.
Right.
So we're both firstborns, and apparently, firstborn, secondborn, firstborn, thirdborn is, more of a combination. I don't know if it's second and third, how well they go together, but I was listening to this talk and I'm like, wow, by the way they're talking, firstborn women are out of luck. Like, how are you going to match up otherwise? I mean, maybe you just get a push over thirdborn or something. I don't know. And then they can just rule the roost. So you did say very early on in our relationship, you're not going to wear the pants. You can't wear my pants. You're not going to wear my
So
pants.
let's tell the story. I said to you, you don't fit in my pants.
Yep.
Yeah. You were trying to wear the pants in the family.
Do you remember what I was doing? I don't remember.
You're being very bossy. I had to get you a pair of bossy pants.
Well, that's way cuter.
And yeah, and you were cute. You were cute. It's when you get mad and you try and boss me around and stuff. Yeah, you were cute.
But you had enough. Like it wasn't going to be cute forever.
No, I was just telling you that you can't wear my pants, that you don't fit in my pants because you were interestingly naive. Would you go shut that door so we don't have that racket coming through? Yeah, you were interestingly naive, and I was intrigued by your attempt to rule the roost, and you were cute at the same time. So
Thank goodness.
I was okay with all of it. And then we had a talk and you kind of understood what I was saying. And then it was kind of like, oh, okay.
I'd like to go on a tangent. What do you mean by interestingly naive?
Well, okay. So, innocence is sweet, right? Innocence can be cute. Innocence can be dangerous, right? Naivete can be dangerous. But you were within the household, you were within my purview, and you were being Miss Bossy Pants. And I was just saying, I know what needs to be done. I know what we're doing here. I understand where you're coming from.
You're saying you know how to play house?
I was doing okay. I didn't need a mom. I needed a girlfriend and then fiance, and then we got married. So I think when you first fall in love, guys turn into little boys because they're excited and giddy, and women turn into moms. per se, right? That's kind of the general theme, right? And if the guy keeps being a boy, a little boy, then the woman will keep being a mom. And then the guy will fall out of love with the woman because she's being a mom. Then he's not really looking for that, although it feels good for a little while, right? Someone's taking care of things, taking care of you, cooking, cleaning, everything, doing all that stuff, like my mom did, and that feels good and familiar and comfortable, but it's not a relationship between two grown people. So then the woman needs to be a wife, a fiance, a girlfriend, whatever your status is at that point, and then needs to, we need to cohabitate and we need to work together, and each person will have their roles, their different things, the heavier things I would do, that kind of stuff. And, depends on who's working nowadays. Almost everybody works, especially when they're young. So anyway, yeah, I was just kind of like, you're being a little bit too pushy about stuff,
What
and,
might, even if you don't remember, what do you imagine were some examples?
oh, simple things could have been, maybe you wanted to rearrange the living room and I liked the couch where it was, and you were just like, well, I'm going to do this, or I don't know, maybe, I don't know. I don't remember. They were simple things, but you were fussy. Fussy.
I think, as I was listening to this, I was thinking, thank goodness it's worked out between us. Because, when you are the firstborn and you have younger siblings, you're often put in charge, right? Whether just by default, because you were the other one in the environment, or the parent actually said, hey, look after your siblings for a few minutes. I've got to go do this.
Mhm.
And so it's very natural to move into that kind of parental and take charge kind of role. And so as I was listening to this, I'm like, oh, poor firstborn women, like, you can hardly help it. It's just like, so
Well,
natural.
firstborn guys, I'm firstborn. I'm bossy. I tell people what to do. I've run companies for a long time, and it's not even second nature. It's first nature.
Yeah.
To be like, we need to do this, we need to do that. This should be like that. That should be done this way. This has to happen before that. And I don't know if you know, like I followed my dad around. That's kind of like you're kind of like a little brother at that level, because my little brother followed me around, but I was only 4 years older than him. My dad obviously was older than me. I think he was 20 years older than me. And so I don't know, I guess it's hard to look at it from the perspective of, because I never had an older brother to come and defend me. If I got into a fight, my older brother didn't show up. I showed up several times for my brother. And I don't know. I guess maybe that's what kind of forms you're kind of more of a follower as a second, as a second born sibling.
I brought this topic up briefly the other day. I think we were kind of in motion in the morning, so we didn't have a lot of time to dive into it, which was good. But you had said that I'm kind of a pain in the butt, but you like it.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Well, yeah, I'm not prepared for any of this. Yeah, well, you're a very hard worker. You're very particular. You're interesting in the work you do. You're interesting. You're fun to talk to. I like to talk to you. And I think you're just very particular, and I know your particularities, I know your peculiarities,
So I know people who are particular and peculiarities. It can quickly get annoying. So does it,
But what do I leverage?
what do you,
What do I leverage?
maybe what's another way of
People
asking the
that get
question?
annoyed at people don't have imagination.
Mm.
People that get annoyed at people aren't looking for the best. They're picking out the worst. And I leverage your strengths. Anytime you are having a problem, I go to what you can do. I'll listen to the problem. We can talk about the problem, that kind of thing. But I go to what you can do to help yourself be productive and to move forward, right?
Yeah.
So I leverage your strengths. I don't pick out your, she always does this way. She always sits this way. She always looks this way. She always lays on the bed this way. I notice habits, but that's all they are to me. It's just, oh, that's a little habit or a quirk or something like that. And I notice them and they embed them in the process that's around our environment, but I don't pick on them. They don't bother me. Because I'm firstborn. I don't care about shit. No, the world, we're listening to a talk at a podcast today, and this CIA operator was saying he knows lots of criminals. He has lots of criminal friends, and he's a CIA agent. He's basically a law enforcement officer. He's a spy. He's not a law enforcement officer, but he's an agent of the United States, right? Which kind of makes me feel like he's a little bit more of a law enforcement officer than not. But his comparison is that the high level operatives and the criminals, they get it. They get along. They understand how things work for real in the world, because generally they're making their own rules. They have to live around the rules of other people, around the rules of society, but they make their own rules. And that really resonated with me in the way I've grew up, in the way I've run business, and the way I do almost everything I do. It really resonated that it's okay to make your own rules. You just got to steer clear of the people and the public and the systems that are set in place to wall you off and control you. And to me, that's like being firstborn, right? Because your parents didn't know much. You're their first kid. They might have tried something, but if it didn't work, they kind of let off a little bit and you're, oh, geez, we don't even know what we're doing, And
well, I hear more of the opposite, in a sense where the parents, with the first child, they can concentrate all their energy into one kid. And so that child usually gets the most rules, the most teaching, the most guidance. And then the parents get tired as more kids come along. And so like the firstborn has to kind of push the boundaries,
it wasn't that way for me. There were no boundaries.
I think that's something particular about your parents.
There were phenomenal examples of behavior and and the way that my parents worked in the world. But there wasn't, I had to be home when the light went on the front of the house or the street lights came on. Then I was supposed to be heading home on my way. And I think, I always showed up for meals because my mom cooked really well. Sometimes I missed dinner because I was out playing and stuff like that, but I wasn't getting in trouble for anything like that. Mm-hmm. My parents were more along the lines of, well, if you didn't do anything to anybody, you didn't really hurt anything,
Mm-hmm.
And so, I got in trouble for stealing once. I had to bring it back to the store. I was a little kid crying the whole way. And if I got in a fight with my brother my parents determined I was the problem, I get disciplined. I took a few spankings from my brother.
For your brother?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, there wasn't really, I mean, I went to school, we went to church. Is kind of like, my parents just were good people. They just did good things. They didn't swear, they didn't smoke, they didn't drink, they didn't go out Friday nights. They didn't, they went out like twice before I was 16 years old. You know,
I think there are a couple of factors that really make being firstborn, both of us being firstborn, actually work well and work better for us. And that is that we have similar ways of seeing. I'm getting something for you to put that on so it's not making noise each time.
so
Yeah, yours.
I am a noisy guy drinking my native root coffee. Drinking my native root coffee. Got that. nativerootcoffee.com.
So you had mentioned you found early on, my work ethic was
Sexy.
attractive, sexy, even
Sexy,
sexy.
yeah.
Wow.
I was very attracted to your work ethic.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of generally the firstborns are a little more forward moving, right? They kind of take the initiative. Let's do this and you do that kind of thing. And they're probably more if they have younger siblings, because I don't think that firstborn and only child necessarily fit in the same category. I'm pretty sure they don't. But you're accustomed to also teaching your younger siblings.
Mhm.
And so that comes naturally, which goes really well with being in a leadership role, because you naturally need to end up teaching as well. And I think what works in our favor is that one, the work ethic, that we're both very forward moving. And I think both of us would really have a problem if we were not with someone who is significantly forward moving.
Yeah.
Just based upon what you say, you thought my work ethic was sexy. And I would be very judgmental being with a person who was not for. You're probably looking at it more on the positive end, I would say.
What?
That you're like, that's sexy. I would probably end up being more critical, like if I wasn't with someone who was forward moving. Just, okay, so forward
So
moving.
I saw your work ethic as sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
if I didn't have a work ethic, you're saying you would have a problem with it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So I think that works in our favor where, firstborn statistically or whatever, opinion wise, people may think that it doesn't work. And I think we both love to learn. And so we're willing to work with each other, you mostly with me in teaching.
Well, there's a lot more aspects other than just firstborn. I mean, there's our numerology, there's our astrological charts, there's our family dynamics, our family background dynamics, right? There's tons of things that are in play here that most statistical conversations don't employ.
Well, the first couple I mentioned are really based in values. We
Mhm.
both value hard work and learning. And so we kind of have built in momentum buddies, study buddies. And I would say the most important factor, perhaps the most important factor, is that I respect you. And because you can't follow someone, or you won't follow someone long-term that you don't respect. You might love them, but respect is a totally different thing when it comes to being able to follow.
So describe the difference between how you love me and how you respect me, so I can understand that.
Yes, I'll tell you how I love you if you want to hear.
I'm just
And
wondering.
respect.
I'm just wondering.
So I think it's probably the most important factor when it comes to how do two personalities who might otherwise really easily just like be at each other in a negative sense. When I first met you, you were already very forward moving, forward thinking. You owned your own business, teaching martial arts, but not only martial arts, you were diversifying your school with other curriculum. And even though I was only 18, there was something in me that just saw competency, right? Someone making something for himself, someone who had, even at a relative, I mean, 30 is still relatively young. You had a lot of people looking up to you, learning from you. And I think that innately engenders respect. You know, when you see other people respecting a person, it already kind of sets the tone. And then what I learned later just even reinforced that. Like
It
you,
also helped that I was the first person you met when you left your parents' home.
yes, the first person I ever met other than family. Yep. Well, I got to see also how you interacted with your child, which apparently was more apparent to you than maybe even
I
to
was a
me.
single father at the time. We should say that.
Yes.
I was single father with sole custody of my son.
So as far as respect, I think that's, you know, that's what happens when two dogs fighting for alpha position, they get in a tussle, and the one who wins, the lesser one, let's just say, in a sense, even at a very rudimentary level, ends up respecting the other, the alpha.
Well, there's fear. You know, first of all, it's fear because that one gets beat, and then it
Yeah.
might turn into respect where that second dog will back up the alpha because the alpha has proven he's the stronger one and he's going to go do the other fighting. And then the other dogs will have to back up, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, that's an important distinction between fear and respect, because
Mhm.
especially when comparing animals, that's fair to point out. But even competency, you know, within teams, you know, why does a captain get chosen if it's obviously really fairly wisely done,
Mhm.
right? And so, yeah, off the top of my head, those would be factors as far as respect goes. You know, I could see and appreciate you had more life experience. I think that just innately engenders, you know, when the more experiences we had together, or when I was in class with you, you were teaching, hearing the examples, I think that innately in a healthy environment, right, with a healthy relationship, that naturally engenders respect.
Yeah. Yeah. And I respected your work ethic because you came in and you just went to work. You were like, what can I do?
But that respect didn't make you fall in line, follow me as a leader.
No, my role was, you know, my role was to teach and my role was to be there to help people because yeah, I had a martial arts school, but I also had I had a gym. I had weights and a gym. I had a spin room, spin bike class. We had yoga going on in there and we had spin bike classes going on in there. And then we had some stand-up tanning booths because everybody likes a tanning booth. And evidently. And you know, I sold supplements and we had a good display of supplements and things. So my role was to help people become better. You know, everybody would come in and they'd be like, oh, I've always wanted to learn martial arts. And then they'd see everything else we have. And then they'd be like, oh yeah, wow, I could do everything here, you know, and it was better than going to a Lifetime or something. I mean, we didn't have a pool or anything, but
Well, the Lifetime didn't exist yet then.
yeah, it
Did it really?
yeah, there was one in Minnetonka and there was one up in Plymouth. And yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I brought up the respect thing. I think that's a major factor as far as, you know, when you're a firstborn or even just someone who's, let's say more of an A-type personality. If a person doesn't show, whether it's in business or an intimate relationship, that other person, in order for an A-type personality, a firstborn, you know, whatever the stereotype, they need to see competency in the other person to be able to follow
Hmm.
another person, to put it in a different context.
All right.
All right. So I just
Just
thought,
listening.
yeah, I thought it'd be an interesting topic because as I was listening to the podcast, I was like, well, it's not impossible, and I think we've also put our relationship first, like we talked about in our submission series, that you brilliantly started out saying, we submit to our relationship first.
Mhm.
And that sets the tone, makes a dynamic for, instead of being like me against you, which would kind of naturally come up.
Well,
that kind of
then we're
personality,
dealing with Miss Bossy Pants again.
right? Yeah. What do you think though of the concept of a woman needing to, in order to follow her man, needing to see to well, being able to have the signs of, well, okay, go ahead, what are you gonna say?
Well, as far as our relationship goes, why don't you say what you felt that you needed to see in order to be able to follow me? And then I'll tell you what I think women should do.
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't think it was a conscious process. I wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna see if I can find the things that I can respect in him so I can follow him. I think it naturally happens. Or it naturally happened, I'll say. And I saw you taking care of your business, literally, in life. You had your school, you had people showing up, whether it was to learn or to teach. I think intuitively, we know that if a person can get other people to show up, whether they're paying them or not, if they can get them to show up and do something that's worthy of respect, especially if they can have a school with students, that takes a lot. Again, how you were with your son. I I don't think I knew for quite a while that you had sole custody of him, but just kind of seeing that, you let him play and be a kid, but there was still like structure. And that intuitively, I think, made sense to me. And so I think those things implied to me that this is a man who can take care of business in the kind of metaphoric sense. This is a man that if I were to couple with him, he's already doing this for himself. He's already doing this because he wants to. And it is a very forward moving, competent person. And I think that helps a woman think that, well, there can be security here.
Yeah, but what did you consciously think? Were you like, I mean, you've got all this analysis now,
Yeah.
right? But what did you, when you walked in and met me, leading up to the next several months as we got to know each other, when did it kick in for you that like, oh, I really like him? Because you weren't prospecting like you're saying you were. You weren't,
No, I wasn't
none of these things were rationally going through your mind. Oh, he is that, so he must be this. And oh, you were just like, ah. When were you attracted to me?
Okay.
When were you like,
Well, when I first walked in, that's probably a good thing to point out, because when I started assessing was more when I was like attracted and like, okay, you kind of, as a woman, kind of start playing the scenario out in your mind, like how.
when was the first time you called yourself Tara Bachland in your mind?
I do remember it was probably 3 or 4 months in, and I had your flyer. Because at night I
For
would.
those that don't understand, a flyer is a piece of paper with information on it that you hang on a bulletin board 22 years ago when we didn't have the internet.
Yes. Okay, a
or social media.
little more of the scenario. Walked into your school soon after the new year of 2000 and started going to your school. Yes, had a flyer, was handing out flyers for you.
Yeah.
And my day consisted of going to school, high school at that point.
Yeah.
Sometimes I had band in the morning. I didn't have
Band camp.
didn't have after school activities at that point. I either worked, went to visit my grandpa in the nursing home, or I went to your gym.
Mm.
And maybe this was a weekend or an occasional off day or something, or maybe I got home early-ish, 7 or 8 or something. Anyways, I would usually most evenings I would spend time on my floor and I would study, look at something. Well, your flyer was there. It was more of a brochure because it was folded.
Oh, yes.
And it
It
had
listed all the martial arts and all the
it was
class
it was
times.
black and white, but I think it was kind of on a bright cream, not bright, yellowish kind of piece of paper.
Yeah.
And it had, of course, a dynamic shot. You had a collie stick. But I think you and Langdon were doing some kind of demo and it
Yeah.
had a action shot. And I saw your name.
Magazine post.
I hadn't known your name really at that. It hadn't really clicked for me. I was like, I knew your school, but I knew you as John. And I was like, Bachland, that's different. Huh. And then so after a while, then you eventually do. Yeah. The more you like a guy, you're like, you try on his last name. And it's just something you do.
So that was 3 to 4 months in.
Probably
Okay.
3
And when did we start dating?
We started dating in June. You left in July for your month-long
So
training.
4 months in, you tried on my last name, and 2
Probably.
more months we were dating.
Yeah, probably 4 months, because I think it was before prom time. And
I remember
we
when you
had-
went to prom, you were like, I'm going to prom. And you
Yeah.
came in your dress in the school, and I was like, oh, that's great. And,
yeah,
whatever.
Bye.
Yeah, bye. We weren't
the thing that-
interested. You had just been driving by and you were like, I think you
Yeah.
had a friend with you. I don't remember who was with
Probably
you.
Alicia,
Oh,
because we
yeah.
all went together.
The Italian girl. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, probably in that time frame. So that probably would have been the time where I was assessing these respectable qualities in you, because it was enough time also to see your consistency, to see, just to have observed, a lot more.
Yeah.
So that gives more of a time frame. So it wasn't like right when I walked in the door, right? I was not looking to date anyone, or
No.
I mean, technically I was still dating someone in Brazil. And so I was
Yeah.
very,
No, we could always tell the women that came in to date the instructors.
yeah. They had a
Yeah.
work ethic, certainly kind of work
They
ethic.
had a work ethic. They had, it was within about the first 10 minutes, you could tell what they were there for. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were acting like they were at the club.
They had a work ethic.
Yeah.
Something like that.
They had a work ethic.
Before
We
it
didn't know what
existed.
twerking was back then. Yeah.
So does that answer your question? Kind of a
Yeah.
time frame.
Yeah.
When does it switch?
Yeah. So I think that's what I think people can have problems with how they pick other people, how they pick their mate, right? I could have been construed, I was running a business. I was a single father with sole custody of my son for 12 years before you and I got married. And, I could have been construed as the bad boy. I was a martial artist, but I was running a business. I was a single guy, and, every day after class, we'd go out to the pub, and drink a lot of beer and, that kind of stuff, eat wings and whatever. So yeah, but I think people should get to know each other like we did. I think people should, especially women, should assess, how does this guy talk? How does this guy act? How does he treat me? Is he just trying to get with me? you know, that would have been a red flag if you had come in my school and I was trying to get with you. Because as a business owner of a, you know, like a public business, because the general population can walk in, and then we have classes that are kind of, you know, I would say they're sequestered, right? You know, and if I was hitting on my students, that would be a red flag. That would be a bad thing. And so you got to get to know a person, and then you got to go with your feelings of attraction, you know, and it doesn't have to be, oh my gosh, you know, I can't wait to get my clothes off with this person. It needs to be like more like, I like to talk to this person. I like to be around them. I like what they're doing in their life. I like to see what they're doing. And it doesn't matter how much money they're making. You know, there's too much emphasis nowadays on money, since we're talking about this. How to choose a mate, basically, is what we're talking about. I think number one is knowing the person outside of an intimate relationship. You have to know the person, right? You have to see them in some of their environments, right? Like, you saw me at the gym. You probably saw me at the coffee shop. You saw me at the restaurant. You know, you saw me drinking beer with the guys or with whoever was there. You saw me eating, you know, and then coming and going from the school. And so there was kind of multiple places. And then one night you came in and said, you and Alicia were going to go salsa dancing. And I said, I love salsa. And I had never salsa danced, but I knew how to dance, and I knew that I could salsa. You know, it's pretty simple. It's about 4 different movements, 3, 2.5, I don't know. And there you go. We went dancing, we went out and had fun. And so I got to see you in a different environment, because if I had gone to the club and you were like running all over, talking to everybody and hugging everyone and kissing everyone or whatever, and then dancing with everyone, that would have been a no for me, you know, and that was a really good environment to see a potential person that I would date in. A lot of people nowadays meet in the club, you know, which I wouldn't even think of that. I wouldn't even think of going to a nightclub to meet a woman.
Yeah. I think that was extremely fortuitous in how we met at your school like that. And I got to see you in so many areas, in so many ways. I was listening as you were talking, but as you were talking, I was imagining what it would be like to meet someone just like casually. We know a couple who met at the grocery store, you know, so that is an environment technically, but you're not typically interacting. It's not interactive like in a class or a social setting. And then I was thinking, okay, well, then you would typically like go on a date or something. At what point do you start seeing that person in another environment other than, you know, face to face, having coffee, having a dinner? And, you know, we got to see so much of each other in a very dynamic way. I think you learn so much more about if they're a good match.
Well, in a very short period of time too.
Right.
I mean, you would come in at least 5 days a week for classes, 4 to 5 days a week.
I could hardly go a day without seeing you.
That wasn't it. The schedule was, in order for you to learn martial arts properly, that you needed to be training continuously.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of funny because people just think, oh, I'll just go to this class and I'll do this. But the martial art instructor, when they see a new person come in, good instructors are very cautious, because you will lose a student 15 minutes into a class. They might stay for the whole hour, but you could lose them because they could get hurt. They could pull a muscle. Somebody could touch them a way that they're not used to being touched. And in martial arts, there's a lot of touching. There's a lot of hands-on. And if you're grappling, you're laying on each other, you're rolling around, you're sweating, you know, the woman's boobs are on you, the guy's balls are moving around, it just really, it really is. There's a lot of physical contact, and so you've got to be very cautious and careful how you start your students. Who, when you see people line up, if all the guys are getting in front of the pretty gals because they want to work out with them, at some point the instructor needs to step in and go, "Hey Becky, why don't you come over here and work with Tara?" "Yeah, Bill, you go over there." What?
The name Becky comes up so often. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we never had any Karens in our class, so I can't use Karen. So
Well, or even like, I remember holding tie pads and it would happen fairly often for a big guy. And all you'd have to do is just pick up his leg and it would lift
Yeah.
me up too.
yeah,
And then
well, and then we would get you matched up differently if it looked like there was a chance that you would get hurt, depending on the guy. There are some guys you don't let work with even smaller guys, and some small guys you don't let work with other guys, because they'll be polite to women, but not to guys that are bigger than them.
Yeah.
It's all, you're an observational specialist when you're an instructor of a physical class.
Which classification student would I have been?
And nothing funny, like,
Funny.
no.
The nothing funny crowd. Uncoordinated.
Oh, very uncoordinated. Yeah. And that's part of it too. You can't put somebody with someone who's completely coordinated and then you feel like a total retard, right? I mean, you're just like,
Yeah.
you can't move at all.
I couldn't even remember the combinations, let alone which foot,
to move. And yeah, I know.
with which hand.
And that is where the instructor becomes the specialist in keeping clientele, right? You become a specialist in keeping your clientele, because otherwise you're going to have 3 guys in there that love to get blood in their mouth from another guy, and they love to be sweat on, and they don't care that the guy farted and he smells, and and you can't run a business with those 3 guys, because they never pay you anyway. So,
but they buy you beer and wings.
They'll buy you beer and wings, but that doesn't pay your rent. Yeah. Those are the guys that I work out with, because those are the guys you can beat the hell out of and they love it. So, and when you're a professional martial artist, you need multiple training partners. You gotta, different sizes, different strengths, and then you just kind of go through them, you wear them out, and so, yeah. So yeah, your classification was new, uncoordinated, had never hit anything properly. You can tell when a woman has hit something, because she'll hit improperly and way too hard. Like, so the elbow will be down on a punch, or she'll smack down on it, it's usually how they hit their little sisters. Smack down.
The little sister smackdown.
Yeah, but they're punching way too hard usually.
Yeah.
So, yeah. People who've never hit anything punch way too soft.
Or we just don't know how
Well,
hard to actually hit.
they don't know. That's right.
Yeah.
They punch way too soft.
Yeah. So if we were to equate this firstborn to being training partners in martial arts, because this is also AKA marital arts.
Yeah.
How would you describe our training dynamic?
Mine and yours.
Yeah. Because I think there's a good analogy there.
So I had you went through my classes and you trained with lots of people. And then I had you go to the Collie group in Minneapolis to go through your phase 1 and phase 2 training and that kind of stuff. Because I think one thing that good instructors understand is that, you need other people you need to get your hands on other people, because people have different strengths, different weaknesses, different flexibilities, different sensitivities, that kind of stuff. So, I've always trained you, but once you became a good training partner for me, then it was a dynamic of me slowing down my strength and things like that and bringing you up in up to speed, in speed and rhythm and timing and sensitivity and strength, when to use your strength and dynamic strength. You know, a lot of people can grab onto something and hang on, but they can't move with it. You know, they can't keep a good grip and have a flexible arm. You know, so there's martial arts is all, it's every kind of training you can think of. Yes, it's how to hit and it's how to move into position to hit, but it's also hitting with the right hand and the same attack with the left hand. With the right foot, the same attack with the left foot. It's ambidextrous training. It's, you know, the flipping things around with your fingers with both hands. You know, they should be congruency in your left right capabilities, which will also enhance your mind. It'll enhance the cognitive recognition between the two hemispheres in your brain. And so that was my role and still is with you to take you to a higher level unconsciously, to bring that cognitive level up, that your body can function and your coordination can function. And if you have to ever defend yourself, your attack can function at such a high level that you don't even have to think about it. And, you know, we're still working on stuff. You know, the sensitivity part is the biggest thing to me, because I have been in a lot of fights before martial arts, mostly a few fights after I got into martial arts. But the biggest problem was always when you got hung up. Like if you're fighting with somebody and you clash, right? And you're stuck kind of midstream, like, oh, I could grab his arm or I could grab his head, but his arm is pushing here and his in a side of his body is here. And it, you know, and how do you get out of that position so you can do what you're trying to do? You know, that's sensitivity. That's, you know, grapplers have good sensitivity. Wrestlers have good sensitivity. Kickboxers generally don't, because they're separated and they're point hitting where they're hitting with their foot, or they're not usually throwing their whole body at somebody to take them to the ground. So, and then there's a bunch of drills you can do within grappling, wrestling, and standing up within different martial arts. Wing Chun has Chi Sao, Kali has Hu Bud, Tai Chi has push hands. You know, there's all these different kinds of sensitivity drills that you can do to make yourself have that high level unconscious cognitive capabilities that become instincts.
We have kitchen dancing is
Yeah.
our sensitivity training these days.
Yeah. Well, you know, you got a narrow aisle, you got to get by each other and hand off stuff when you're cooking, and yeah, it's kind of fun.
Mhm.
So this is how to choose a mate. That's what I think this should be the title for this.
Okay. Can roll with that.
Yeah. We found a lot of commonality, and we have, like, you speak multiple languages, and I've always been happy about that. I've always been in awe of that. Like when we go to other countries, you know, I love going to countries where you speak the language, because then we can get around it. People get to know us very quickly. They're like, oh, you speak Spanish, you speak Portuguese, whatever it is. And you know, how'd you learn that? Or they'll say, how'd you get an American husband? Because you speak so well. And so I've always bolstered that with you. You know, you've always encouraged me in the things that I want to do. And we kind of met on that level. Like we trained together. We've read the same books and talked about them. We don't have like opposite hobbies. I know some people say, well, I love fishing and she loves quilting. I don't remember.
Fishing and quilting.
Yeah. And so he goes off on a Saturday and catches some fish and drinks some beer and talks to his buddies, and I don't know, looks at porn on his phone, whatever he does. And she quilts and maybe has a glass of Chardonnay. something like that, right? Which is kind of opposite, right? I mean, but it's the man being the hunter gatherer and it's the woman being the caretaker of the home. And I could see how that kind of stuff can work. You know, they each need their own separate time. Anytime you and I want to do something, generally, it's like we want to do it together. We want to, like, we mountain bike together. We train martial arts together. Our businesses are in the same facility. Our, you know, we love to cook. You know, we do have different tastes when it comes to food, but we do eat each other's cooking. You know, you'll cook a lot for me and both of us, and I'll eat, you know, most of it as long as there's not too much spinach or kale or
I haven't cooked with kale in
beet
a long time.
greens, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of
There's that.
fun stuff. But yeah, I think first of all, getting to know each other, and then second of all, continuing to get to know each other. Like you asked early on in this cast, and I said, I am, what did I say? I just lost it. It was right there. It was in the beginning of the podcast. Oh, well, it'll come back to me.
So getting back to the respect, I think it's like we've read before in leadership books, you know, there's positional leadership and then there's earned leadership, right? And positional is, you know, you came in, you were hired for this position, or, you know, I'm the dad, I'm the boss, you know, if you take that kind of mentality, it's mainly a mentality. But
Well, I've seen guys do that and it never works. You know, you're always fighting, then you're creating a combative situation.
right.
You know, in our relationship, you created multiple combative situations because that's what you came from. You had a mother that was very combative. And so in order for you to impress upon me the ideas that you wanted in our relationship, you got combative. And that's kind of when I said, hey, wait a minute, you know, you can't fit in my pants. You know, what we're doing here has roles. But what I would say is I would start out with, I love you and I want to be in a relationship with you. But this thing that you're doing, I can't live with. And so what I did was I separated you from the thing, right? Consciously. And I was doing this consciously because I had been in other relationships, none of which were successful more than a year. Every one was just a year or under that I would consider successful for a year, you know. And what's Starry doing?
Well, I shut the door.
Oh, she's scratching on the door. So when I would think about what I needed to say to you, I would think, okay, so I love you. I don't like what you're doing. And I need to separate the thing that you're doing from you. And then I need to present to you this other component that I love you and I want to be in a relationship with you. And we are in a relationship, but there's this thing over here that you're doing. So it needs to be removed and cast aside. And you were very accepting of that type of thing. You were very much like, oh, okay. And maybe it was the way that I said it, you know, maybe it was the fact that I said, I love you and I want to be in a relationship with you. And I removed this thing that I was going to complain about. And it wasn't like, oh, I can't stand it when you do that all the time, you know, because then I would have been merging that thing with you because you're doing it.
Yeah.
And you're doing it to me, which then would make you defensive. If I said it that way, you'd get defensive. Well, that's not what I'm trying to do, you know, and then, but that's what you're doing. And then you hear these, you know, that'd be a ridiculous way to talk, in my opinion.
Well, I think that was very smart and wise. Innately, you know, I like to think of myself as a pretty reasonable person in the sense that I can take emotion out of it and think about it. But that's what you literally did, is you settled my feelings like this is not a question of whether I love you or not. I do love you, but, this, I need this to change, or I won't tolerate this. You're of course setting your boundaries, right? And especially early on in a relationship, it's still like you haven't established a big foundation, not even just a strong foundation, but over time, you more innately that this person loves you.
Well, and the other thing that, and I've always taught the guys that work for me this too, is that when you get to know somebody really well, you should work on their strengths, because you know what they do well, you know what they don't do well. Hey, Star. Hey, there's your little pad. You can come here. So if you can separate, I wrote down, separate the person from the behavior. I don't think I even consciously thought of it at that time. I just think I did it.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to have the conversation with you in a very constructive way, in a non-confrontative way. And not that I'm not a confrontative person. I've spent my life being extremely confrontative, and very much into confrontation. But I didn't want that in my relationship with you.
Something that I thought of earlier when you were talking about, I forget what, but sorry, that I think what's really helped our relationship is I don't think that we've given up trying to impress one another.
Right.
And that's right.
That's muscles.
And I think that coincides with the positional leadership versus respect. When you are still kind of trying to impress that other person, you're in a way kind of trying to gain their respect.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of riffing here, but I think for a man, doing the things to impress his woman for respect can earn him leadership. The woman,
It can
looking
also
up to-
wear you out as a man.
And then I wonder if for the woman, doing things to gain his respect is earning more care, in a sense. And I'm just riffing with that. So
I don't think it's equal. I don't think a woman has to do things to impress a man. I think a woman, because a guy falls in love with a woman, right? So a guy falls in love with a woman and he always sees her as the woman he fell in love with. Right? That's my perspective, right? If you talk to a guy about what he loves about his wife or girlfriend or whatever, he'll generally go back to the beginning and he'll bring up things that happened early on. And I think that sets something in a guy's mind. I think a woman needs to maintain. Doesn't mean you need to be the size and weight you were in high school, but needs to maintain herself, keep herself up, be moderately pretty, moderately cute, and keep up her, the things that she sees she does in the relationship that are valuable to herself and to her man. I don't think a woman has to do a bunch of stuff to try and impress a man. I don't think guys think that way.
So it's more about just maintaining.
Yeah.
It's not about accomplishing, achieving, and
The
becoming more.
dark night of the soul for a man is when a woman cuts her hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she goes from this lovely gal with nice long hair to a chopped short butch cut that is like, and the guy is just like, oh, I'm old and she doesn't care anymore.
So do you think most guys really, it's not about her achieving the next level of this or that? It's just, kind of maintaining basically what they agreed upon in their early relationship?
Now, for
Or
me, it's about you continuing to achieve and keep climbing. Yeah, anywhere you need to go. Yes,
is,
yes, for me. No,
okay,
no.
because the work ethic is sexy.
No, I honestly, I would love you forever. Um, if you made an effort at maintaining yourself, you didn't just let yourself go to waste, an extra 40, 50 pounds, for no reason whatsoever, right? Because you wouldn't wear it well. Not that much weight. And that's not an insult. It's a compliment because you keep yourself up. But it's not necessarily even about that. It's about maintaining the understanding, the respect, the love, the care, all the things that a guy needs. A guy needs a woman to depend on him. A guy needs a woman to respect what he does for a living. Even if he's making less than her, if he's going to work every day and he's coming back every day, that's a bargain. That's, because it could be different, and it probably won't get much better outside of that relationship, as we know. I mean, there's a lot of talk about it online now too. We know there's an age range where people are very desirable, and then there's like they'll talk about guys as they get older, they get more sexy and all that kind of stuff. Some guys, Pierce Brosnan, sure, Mel Gibson, sure, those types of guys, right? Sean Connery, for sure.
Well, the roles that they play sure didn't
Well, yeah,
hurt.
that helps. And that's why
Yeah.
I'm choosing movie stars, because they get to be in this perfect leading man role, right? But most guys in the world, uh, aren't getting sexier as they get older. And most women aren't getting sexier as they get older. There's a distinguished look that a guy will get, like you get a few grays in your beard. And if you grow it out a little bit, you kind of could look a little, salt and peppery, they talk about that, and gray hair along with a dark beard. I don't know, all that fashion BS. But what happens is people get more knowledgeable, people get more wise, people get better at decisions. They generally have a little bit of money to play with, or more money to play with, and to do certain things and make certain investments, or whatever you want to call it. And they're established, and because it takes a while. And so, yeah, I think men are always trying to impress, but you can get caught up in the wrong impressments, trying to impress your woman with the wrong kind of thing, can lead to disaster, can lead to a woman thinking that there's going to be millions of dollars when a guy only makes 55,000 a year. There's not going to be millions of dollars if you only make 55,000 a year at a job. That it's just not going to happen. And people should accept their position, still striving and working, but not pie in the sky BS to try and make themselves feel like they're more valuable than they are. Human beings are intrinsically valuable as human beings. There's nothing more valuable or sacred than human life. And beyond that, that doesn't mean you're going to get paid $1 million a minute for your time. You've got to be able to produce a heck of a lot to get $1 million a minute. So, yeah, I think those are kind of the separate things that men and women look for. I think if a woman, like I said, if a woman maintains, she's ahead of the game. If she just maintains, because most women don't, you know.
All right.
Mhm.
Sounds doable at the least,
Right.
I think.
But for you, you know, just keep striving and working and growing and making more money and that kind of thing. You know.
I can't get away with maintaining.
Well, you know, a good work ethic is sexy.
Yeah.
You can maintain. You do very well. Got a happy little kitty there.
Yeah, she's nugging up. So, how to meet your mate slash, are you doomed if you're dating a firstborn and you're a firstborn?
No, I mean, you know, life is what you make it. You know, we heard on a podcast when we were driving, you know, somebody asked, you know, what is the meaning of life? And I think personally, I think the meaning of life is to live a life of meaning. And it is whatever that means to you as a person. If you are evaluating your environment and you're saying, well, this is what I'm going to do in my life because of my environment, the people around me, my coworkers, you know, the people that work for me or the people I work for, whatever it is. And you find meaning in that, and you're doing meaningful things to you. And if they are meaningful to other people, that expands it even more, and that makes it even better. But, you know, the meaning of life is to live a life of meaning. And it can be to be the richest guy in the world, and it could be to be the guy that gives away everything that he has. You know, there is no parameter, you know, there's no book that says, here's what we have to do when we come here. You know, we can choose to do what we want to do. We're free. We have liberty. We have God-given liberty, you know, because there is no constraints put on you. You're just born, you know, and then you're in an environment, and then you can develop into whatever you want to develop into. So.
Well, I think how we met was exciting, and it's continued to be exciting. I think our dynamic works. I think intention has a lot to do with it. That, you know, with our energies, it could be a lot of headbutting, or it's, or it can be a lot of mountain biking and bouncing around ideas.
Swinging our hair in the wind.
Yeah.
Instead of banging heads.
Yeah. Banging heads or head banging.
Right.
I think that's a good wrap up. How about
Good.
you?
Well, this podcast is filmed on the iPhone, linked up to the computer using the iPhone as the webcam. And I'm drinking Native Root coffee out of my Yeti mug. Neither are sponsors for this. Apple's not a sponsor. Yeti's not a sponsor. Native Root's not a sponsor. But we love those products, so we'll keep using them.
There we go.
Are we done?
We're done.
Give me a pound.
Yeah, I still owe you a pound. Bam. Earlier.
Oh, you're
Picking on me. You picked on me.
Sorry, Tara picked on me. All right, we'll see y'all later.